Oh, boom, ba-da-boom. Hey, I'm Thundercloud. You know, Mum calls me James. Washing away the garbage, leaving rainbows after rains. It's Chillin Tuesday, and I'm back to have some fun linguistic games with you. Well, yes, I have been away. Not really. Well, last week was the Australian Poetry Slam Poets Workshop, here on Tuesday night and Wednesday night. Congratulations to Ella Sorensen and Professor Gabriel Dunleavy are both off to Sydney for the New South Wales final of the Australian Poetry Slam. Yeah, awesome. We had a great Tuesday here too. We had a workshop with Andrew Cox and Luke Patterson. Thank you very much, Andrew and Luke from Word Travels Australian Poetry Slam for your workshop. So let's begin the night here on this 22nd of August 2023, Chillin Tuesday, with acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which I broadcast, the Gamilaroi and Banby people, to acknowledge the continuing connection to the land of the elders past, present and emerging, acknowledge that sovereignty has never been ceded. Alright, what am I doing here? Chillin Tuesday. Well, it's currently 12 degrees here in Gyra. It feels like 9 degrees outside. We're heading for a bottom of 5 tonight, which is pretty warm actually. There'll be no frost. Heading for a top of 17 tomorrow in Gyra with winds up to about 22 degrees. So that's the weather report out of the way on Chillin Tuesday. I'm sitting here in the Seahorse Medicine Cafe at the Australian Poetry Hall of Fame. And tonight I'm featuring a poet you may have heard of, you may not have heard of, Edwin Wilson. Yes, Edwin James Wilson, a poet from the Mullumbimby, Lismore way, also lived at Wylam and Sydney and Armidale, and I happened upon his anthology yesterday at Boo Books in Armidale. Big shout out to Boo Books down there for their great selection of poetry that I often buy when I've got some spare cash for the Australian Poetry Hall of Fame, Australian Poetry Library and Archive. And I didn't get his anthology, but I did get a selection of Edwin Wilson books, which I'll be reading out to you tonight. So first I will have a sip of my peppermint tea. Is the tea of the day, organic Nerida peppermint tea. I don't have anything to do with them, so I'm not endorsing Nerida tea, but I like it. Yummo. And I do endorse organic stuff though. Alright, now with the workshop that we had here, we got a bit of writing out on the night, and there were a few exercises that Andrew Cox took us through last Tuesday, and that's why there was no Chillin Tuesday for last week, and there was no Wednesday words because we had the workshop and slam. So the first one that we were challenged to write was just a free writing exercise given a couple of minutes and just said, right, well this was bad poetry. I took a book of poetry to read by a river named Come Back to Bandara Town by the Guida. As I read it out loud, it became quite clear that the poet was trying to rhyme but had no idea. Now I know I've never claimed to be a great poet, but I read and write a lot, and I know good and bad poetry. When I hear it, I know it. Use some metaphor, similes, alliteration and rhyme, but get your meter right or free verse some other time. But this book wasn't great. Bush poetry, pretend. I think I've said enough, so it's time this poem ends. So that was the first thing that I wrote there. in our workshop last week. Now the second exercise, so a free write exercise is just write your short thoughts down. And you can do it there at home. You can pause the video, get a pen, stop, give yourself a minute on a timer, 2 minutes on a timer, and just write whatever. And it's a great thing for overcoming writer's block. Yeah. Okay. Now another idea for a poetry is questions. You can use this question words: who, what, when, where, how, why, or start things like if this happened, what would I do, etc. Or when this happens, something else will happen, whatever. And will this happen, whatever. So that's one way. Another one. So yeah, this one sort of this is how this happened. How many are dead from compliance? How many people hate their jobs? Why? If an octopus had an extra tentacle, would it be a nonopus? What if everything is actually nothing but energy? What if? Are there billions of inhabited planets in the universe? How many grams of magic mushrooms would be a breakthrough dose? Why do I want to get out of my body and visit other dimensions? Why don't ducks get cold feet? Would socks make a difference? Can you imagine a duck washing day and all the duck socks all get mixed up and the duck would have to wear odd socks? Do ducks with long legs have human disease? How do ducks go on the internet? Web feet. All right, so there you go. That was the other exercise we did there. And all right, so yeah, and finally all right. I'm not going to do the finally because I'm going to get on with Edwin Wilson's one, and I'll do that later on, and you can hear the final poem that I got out during the Australian Poetry Slam workshop. All right, Edwin Wilson. I'll read you a little bit about Edwin. Edwin was born at Lismore, New South Wales in 1942 and spent the first 5 years of his life in a then isolated farming community at Wardell, beside the Richmond River. He spent a formative period of his childhood at Mullumbimby and was educated at Mullumbimby and Woodbine high schools and Armourdale's Teachers College, where he initially trained as a science teacher. After completing a science degree part-time at the University of New South Wales, he lectured at Armourdale Teachers College from 68 until 1971. In 1972, he was appointed as an education officer at the Australian Museum, Sydney. While at the museum, he had the opportunity to travel through America, Canada, England, blah, 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 Russia. In 1980, he became publicity officer at the Royal Botanic Gardens in Sydney. Now, apparently, he ended up publishing 9 books of verse. This is one of his early ones, a Banyan tree. Or, yeah, Banyan, is it? No, just Banyan, yeah. And dedicated to a tree that he planted, a selection of poems by Edwin Wilson. One of the things is a lot of his books here are illustrated with pencil drawings by Elizabeth McAlpine. And this is a limited edition, number 227 of 500. And the initial inspiration for this work came from the beautiful countryside and rainforest around Mullumbimby. Although there were many other influences, the poetry explores the habitual themes of love, death, man and nature, truth and knowledge, with recurring botanical imagery. Traditional poetic form has been consciously retained, and apparent simple structure of some of the poems may be deceptive. They are a result of a process of revision and refinement over more than a decade. This compilation is an individual and a corporate journey through time and should be read sequentially. The word Banyan was first given to a draft collection of poems in 1970. In 1968, I planted one of these trees beside the Richmond River near where I lived as a child. It thrives today in 1982, hopefully as a symbol for my poetry. So this is the first of many of the books I'll be reading tonight of Edwin Wilson's, and I've chosen 3 or 4 just from this one, maybe 3. And most books I've just chosen 3 so I don't infringe the copyright. This Banyan here was published by Woodbine Press in 1982. Homage to a mountain, Chincogan, Mullumbimby. Guardian of my barefoot play. The country roads, fern banked, spring water washed, guava trees and mulberries. I paint you black line rimmed in ritual, abate your dormant fire. A child in long shadows on a bike, a flock of ibis from the swamp, a ring of mushrooms suckled by the hills, delicate pink nipple, buds before the pregnant brown. A plover pipes a warning to the sky. Less a mountain by a foot, so I believed. A can of stones 12 inches high will crown you soon. Consent to your majority. For now, from my apogee, be content as a major hill. Jacaranda. Bees in the blell flowers that distill with relish. Birds in the rose bower, swinging on the trellis. Smell of yellow roses, tar blisters in the lane. Doves coo in the cool trees. Rain on corrugated iron. Bees in the bellflowers. Blue carpet to the veranda. Sunshine and white clouds. Showers of jacaranda. Rainforest. Fingers clutching mountain spur, all snug in ravine pockets, more cluttered than my mother's handbag. These last savage stands of innocence. Inside the sheltered cloisters of the palm and leech, spider and creeper, this quiet arena dripping with creation plays out the last fugue of shade and light. After the blade, a fern withers in. Day's arc, growth strangles its host as a young fig and a liane weaves a spiral whirl of love towards the sun. And finally, perspective. Beyond the stardust of a veil nebula is a filigree of wisdom? What are our hopes and fears but aberrations of light? For all our passion we embrace time's patient love. That's from the book Banyan. Now, I said I'll read to you my last one that I got from the workshop the other night. Oh, I'd like to go swimming and flying with ducks, but somehow I don't think they'd be interested in spending any time with me. I don't quack well. I don't have webbed feet or wings. That makes flying difficult. Actually impossible. I dreamt of flying once, out over the ocean, free, except that I could only fly if I held a red plastic Coke bottle lid to my belly. Eventually I worked out how to fly fast, using just my mind and willpower. I've got a Coke bottle with a message inside it. Gods must be crazy. You know, like that Botswanan movie from the 80s of the same name. I wonder if holding on to that bottle is stopping me flying. The film is about a Kalahari bushman on a journey to throw a Coke bottle off the earth because it brought so much misfortune. Well, he came in today, said his potassium levels are low, probably because he drinks so much Coke. Funny how he waddles, Waddly Warren Wadley, aka Wally. Wally has duck's disease, i.e. short legs and bum close to the ground. I wonder if ducks with long legs have human disease. I don't think Wally will ever fly. But wingsuit flying, it sure looks fun. Maybe if I drink Red Bull, I'll grow wings. Okay. There you go. And so that brings it all the way back to the beginning where it says, I'd like to go swimming and flying with ducks. Gotcha. All right, so, yeah, tying it all in together, that's what poetry is. Okay, so, what is poetry? Well, look, one of the books of Edwin Wilson is called Falling into Verse, and it's actually a handbook for aspiring poets. Believe it or not, someone actually wrote that. And there are this was published in 1989, and there are some absolutely interesting the content. Introduction. What's poetry? For example, censorship, epitaphs, a purpose for art, and then impulse and motivation, truth, death, sex, love, marriage, etc. Then there's grace, flow, polish, the poetic gift, success and action, about paranoia of poetry, poetry structure, form, hazards of poetry, advice to aspiring poets, and the genesis of himself, and hints for publishing poetry. All right, well, I'm going to start with what is poetry here, and I'm just going to skim through this and pull out all the dot points. Trying to write verses like hacking a pathway through jungle with its attendant stinging trees and wait a whiles and every assorted leech and bug that sucks and bites in a tangle of verbiage for all fitting for the light. I use rainforest imagery because I've just completed Songs of the Forest and have rainforests on the brain. He says, poetry is like a disease. Poetry afflicts the young because of their metabolic turmoil and emotional extremes. Paradoxically, poetry is therapeutic. Poetry is obsession and paranoia. Poetry is feeling generated by the emotions. Poetry is a drug of addiction. Poetry is a percolation and precipitation of experience to a concentration of despair. Poetry is reduction. Poetry is concentration. Poetry is intelligible. Poetry is accessible. Poetry is durable. Poetry is unity and harmony. All right, we'll keep on going over here. A purpose for art. Ah, yes, how to read poetry, that's right. Because of this historical association with its musical origins, all poetry should be read aloud in a special way, or sung, or at least sounded aloud by the mind's ear, inside one's head. This later activity of singing a song to oneself inside one's own brain may not be a skill that everyone possesses, but it must be developed to enable one to read poetry in company without disturbing others. All right. And finally, up the back, practical hints for publishing poetry, reputation. The great nexus is that it's difficult to have verse published unless you have a reputation. And it's impossible to get a reputation unless you've had verse published. So, my note to that is self-publish. That's what the internet can do these days. If you don't know how to do it, Google it. Oh, right. Okay. So, falling up into verse. The next one I've got for you is Cosmos 7. All right. Now, this was Edwin Wilson, selected poems 1967 to 1997. It's actually selected poems from his books of that period, arranged by the books in chronological order. I'm going to start with Night Polinated Flower. This is on page 53. A creeping dendrite in a stone, the vein within a leaf or bone, the lace wing of a dragonfly, the wonder of the lily's white, ripple marks upon the sand, the nipple of an urchin's shell, tributaries across her breast, fan into deltas of the skin. Rings of agate grow like moss or foil insects' amber sap, the cleaving of the chrysalis, the despotism of that kiss. Wigs of darkness sob their loss, as fragrance bids the subject moth to consummate this potent hour, a starlight pollinated flower. Flowering trunk. Like old crones, warts and all, beyond the change of life, with scaly bark, deep furrowed trunk. Pale brides with pliant bones, swell on the heartwood, savoured and mysterious, and tumble into flower, unctuous nectar cups of aromatic esters, spiked with love and hope, to abrogate the loneliness of jungle scrub as garland for a bowerbird, or balm for forest mice. House and garden. The flame still burns at 50 years. The children, as I knew them, on the wall, with paintings, artefacts, soft animals and books, and other trophies hung. The spirits of the forest drape their laced wing, tapestry of dreams, macrame baskets grace a room with creeping vines of Iremonger weaves its handicraft on lattice wood, and I was loath to leave that scented garden where the wattle birds and lorikeets proclaim their place, wanting to stay to milk the day of memory. Well, very lovely imagery there. Songs of the Forest. This one was, so many of these are signed by Edwin Wilson. This one was published in 1990, and I've only got two out of here. Mullumbimby Creek. Where the road ends at Mullumbimby Creek, Greek Cypriots built stilt homes after the war on black volcanic stones. Dark-eyed children peered from those rickety doors. Dogs barked, paws clung to the heavy air, and bananas were tiered to the sun. Rainforest clawed along the creek with lawyer vine and maiden's bush, as virgins waiting for the priest, and grapes hung purple in a tree fern. Parthenon, planted by Greek farmer, Pan played a giddy tune in the lantana. Strangler fig. High from a tree's moist fork, a probing dendritic eclair, plumb line root, a plait of hair, becomes a conduit to support the lateral branches of a sport. Some cuckoo flowering affair, an easy rider, networking in the air, a corporate raider wishing to consort. The city's wards are just rigged with parasitic mortgages and loans, and dinging epiphytic ferns and figs, backstabbing perched on stepping stones, embrace while putting in the knife, who die of root starvation in the night. Next book, Asteroid Belt. More by poems by Edwin Wilson, again once signed to Morrison K. This one was published in 2002. Yes, okay. On reading Peter Alexander's biography of Legs Murray, I was struck with the overlap with aspects of the book and with my own memoirs, The Mullumbimby Kid, A Portrait of a Child as a Poet, August 2000, and dedicated to my father, Edwin James Wilson, with Legs Murray known as Tiddly as a child. Tiddly and Tudge were spirit twins, Tom Sawyer and Huck Finn, with uncles felled by killing trees and a branch of poetry. Two barefoot poets licking plates in country north of Woolai Lake. Sans power water under dacks are not politically correct. Another conchy nerd or swat come to the rich kid's coffee shop down from the existential sticks to Gorka. City trains and chicks. 500 pounds a private room, a typewriter, my Lebensraum. To be a poet, not to be, with Les much higher up the tree. Exposed to chaos in the womb, I exercise my psychic wounds and pray that God not pull the pin. Art is a form of autism. I don't think so. It's creation. Wormholes. Discs of friction orbit nothing in their singularity. Light up the vortex of dark water holes where blood would boil in your capillaries. Who knows the leopard by its spoor, still quaking from antlions and cheetahs? Dream of future eaters, wormholes in the bank, less obvious, more nasty than before. And here we are. Finally, here we go. Old poems are like a wrecker's yard, full of discarded cars to raid occasionally for a replacement crankshaft, carburettor, diff, a line, a phrase, spare parts from old poems out of warranty, to recondition later text and change gear from one stanza to the next, drive a hard bargain with recycled cams. Old poems. Again by Edwin Wilson. Now I'm into the home stretch here. I've got a few left. Look, I'm going to read you one more that I got this week. This was the Wednesday morning after the word shop. And where am I? I'm a bit lost here today. Yes, this was the day after the word shop. Another lovely day. No way! I read it on the internet just the other day. Someone said something, somebody misunderstood, and somebody took someone the wrong way. Someone made a point that was fine, somebody made a judgment at the time. Then someone and somebody couldn't let it be, argued back and forth about me. When someone and somebody don't let shit go, it appears they're fighting the winds that blow. Or two fools arguing about the shades of grey and perspective of the many kinds of weather every day. Okay. So that's a little one from Thundercloud there, arguing about nothing important. All right. Final book, My Brother Jim, by Edwin Wilson. This was published in 2009. First one. Reader beware. Life is intrinsically unsafe. With things that bite, it's dangerous to read, write, undermine cosmologies, to breathe, walk, work, malign or copulate. But what of acts of destiny or fate? A falling turtle or a lightning strike? We can't see God, we can't sue God. Our teachers, parents' DNA for less resilience. Can't legislate against stupidity. Yet in this natty state, we shoot the messenger while claiming our mandate to microchip the dog, the kids, and bludgeon life with logical absurdities. No trees above waist height in gardens. Fence around each river, beach and bath and refugee. Society is stuffed when it creates more ambulance chasers than sissy bars, an import from the USA. Indemnified to enter parks, ride on a train or bus, to marry, walk the street, to operate or teach, or swim between the flags, no obligation, quote or care, to sign a waiver now, to read my verse when poetry is hardly safe. Foreign blatant, copped it in red burrows over gollywogs, and noddy slept with big ears, felt a little queer, with vultures picking over manuscripts and words stripped to the syllable. Reader beware, the PC squads so look the look, and walk the walk, do the hard yards but not the talk, and don't ignore, lose talk, sink books, and look out for that omnibus. Animal liberation. Scum, they cry, for eating meat and punch the air and set anemic jaws to save themselves through loathing and the odd psychotic episode. The abattoir is not aesthetic, to be sure, but speciesist, with eggs and fish, okay? Man is an omnivore. Look at our gut and teeth, the bloodlust of the chimpanzee, egged on by screaming concubines. Remember, this is your pies. We slaughter wheat and cabbages to eat, for plants respire and fart and putrefy, share half our DNA, and carrots die when pulled up by the roots, just as predation by a crocodile or lion reduces us to meat attached to bone. Dogs urinate about their range, so let iron blood, the hematite, we, like our protein, concentrate. My brother Jim. Our father, Edwin be thy name, painting with God, whose carnal sins of 38, for snogging Catholics in his Ford V8, jinxed my firstborn, the selfish gene, this sorry business of the spleen, collateral damage of the old religious wars of East Wardell, and had they married, I'd have not have been left two boys, father dreaming for the same Y chromosome. A Christ thorn, a marble urn, my doppelganger, found at 61. My brother, Edwin James, now I have booked my plot, a second chance to cultivate unease. No sex in heaven, please. All right, and the last one for the night for Chillin Tuesday. We're back on this Tuesday, the 22nd of August, 2023. Now, if you've been liking what you're listening to tonight, give this a thumbs up, please, and leave a comment down there what you've liked tonight and who would you like to hear. Write a comment of what poets you'd like me to hear me reading out here on Chillin Tuesday. Epitaph, after Gwen Harwood 2, Epitaph 2. Give us the wisdom to endure vicissitudes. The tenor of our deeds, far from the madding crowds, unseemingly haste. For you, can't take it with you, mate, knowing what I know now. So, empty hearts of enmity and fret, down under is a permanent address. All right, well, that is Edwin Wilson finished for tonight. Thank you for joining us here on Chillin Tuesday at the Australian Poetry Hall of Fame. I'm Thundercloud. I'm washing away the garbage, leaving rainbows after rain. Don't forget to tune in tomorrow night, Wednesday Words, same bat time, same bat channel, even though there are no bats anywhere at all. Same seahorse time, same seahorse channel, the Australian Poetry Hall of Fame channel here on YouTube, 6:30 p.m. Now, if you're in Gyra tomorrow night, why don't you pop in here to the Seahorse Medicine Cafe, get a bite to eat, 5:30, and then 6:30 we will kick off Wednesday Words. Okay, I'm Thundercloud. I will blow out of here and boom, away. See you later.